most entities in the world, put themselves at risk of further sanctions and further enforcement activities from the United States if they transact with these farms and with these entities. So what we've seen when we announced our first round of sanctions under this new executive order last month is in Israel, Israeli banks freezing the accounts of the 4 previously designated individuals, and I won't make any predictions what will happen going forward, but I know that every entity around the world takes these sanctions very seriously.
And why go ahead with them now? Is it because there's not been progress in talks for a temporary ceasefire?
This is completely independent of the ongoing effort to achieve a temporary ceasefire and release of the hostages. We continue to pursue that. There continues to be ongoing work inside the United States government and with our partners in the region to try to achieve an agreement, but this work is independent of that. We have made clear for some time that we wanted to see Israel take additional action to, number 1, stop extremist settler violence, and number 2, hold those responsible for it accountable. And we made clear that if we didn't see sufficient steps, we were ready to take action. And that's why you saw us first impose visa bans in December. Next, the president issue this executive order in February, and now us continuing to add designated entities to the list of those that we have sanctioned. And I will just say, this is an area where we are going to continue to remain vigilant, and if additional actions are appropriate, we will not hesitate to take them.
On Israel, thank you, Matt. I just want to follow up on something that Matt raised separately from Senator Schumer's remarks. There was this week released an unclassified American intelligence community assessment that indicated that Israel was likely to face lingering armed resistance from Hamas for years to come, that its military would struggle to secure the tunnel systems in Gaza, and it also said that the viability of Prime Minister Netanyahu's leadership and coalition may be in jeopardy. Do those assessments comport with this department's view of the situation? And if so, is the department going to reach for partners other than Netanyahu in its diplomatic efforts?
So a few things about that. Number 1, with respect to any assessment offered by the intelligence community, I'm going to defer to the intelligence community to speak to those. That's true here. It's true with respect to any other intelligence assessment that they offer publicly. I will say that we have always made clear to Israel that it is important that they have not just a short-term tactical plan or short-term plan to win the initial conflict, but that they have a long-term plan for dealing with the issues raised in this war, that they have a plan for governance in Gaza after the initial fighting stops, that they have a plan for security in Gaza after the fighting stops. Now, we have been working with Arab partners in the region to develop such a plan that would deal with security, that would deal with reconstruction, that would deal with a political path forward for the Palestinian people. And we have made it clear to Israel that these are incredibly important issues that they need to take seriously.
And on the question of, first, let me just push you on the intelligence front, because the State Department has its own intelligence arm in INR. So did the assessment draw an objection from within this building? Was there a differing view from within this building?
I'm not going to speak to internal intelligence matters. I never would do, and you shouldn't. You should. I know, but you shouldn't read that anything into it other than that's just a blanket rule that I'm not going to talk to that. Obviously, we coordinate with others in the intelligence community, but this is an assessment offered initially by the DNI, and I'm not going to speak to the internal deliberations that went into it.
So you won't address the Netanyahu's coalition being potentially in jeopardy assessment either?
I just don't have any comment on it from here.
Just as an additional, unnamed officials as a result of these assessments within Israel have accused the U.S. government of trying to oust the prime minister. Do you care to respond to those?
So with respect to that, I would say that this is an intelligence community assessment, similar to assessments that the intelligence community offers from time to time, not about Israel, but about countries all around the world. It has nothing to do with trying to take a position in internal Israeli matters or take a position in internal Israeli politics. We do not have a position on that. Who leads the government of Israel is a matter for the Israeli public to decide, just as that is a matter for the residents of any country to decide with respect to the leadership of their country. We deal with the elected prime minister. We will always deal with the elected leadership of Israel. That will always be our policy.
Okay, one last one on hostage talks, because you mentioned there was ongoing work. Is it the case that the stakeholders surrounding the talks are just waiting for a response from Hamas, or is there a revised offer being put on the table?
I'm not going to get into any level of detail other than to say that there continues to be an offer on the table to Hamas, as you heard the secretary say when he was at this podium yesterday, that we think they should accept. Kylie, and welcome back. I know the secretary said it
Thank
yesterday,
you.
but from you,
Appreciate
welcome
it.
back.
It's good to be here. Sorry to beat a dead horse, but I do have one more question
No, you're not.
on the Netanyahu remarks, specifically what Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said. I understand that you're not going to, talk about if you guys coordinated or anything like that. The White House did say that they were given a heads up ahead of those remarks, but
Well, we did not coordinate. We were given a heads up, but we did not coordinate.
okay. But he called for a new election in Israel. Can you just clearly say if the administration agrees that this is time for a new election or not
That
in
is
Israel?
just not a position that we have taken.
So you won't take a position either way as to
There's-
if you agree with those remarks or not?
No, they are remarks that he made, and he, as I said, Congress is an independent branch of government.
But do you think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is in strong standing right now as the leader of Israel?
I am not going to offer any type of assessment of that. He is the elected prime minister of Israel.
Okay. Go.
Yeah, Said, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. Very quickly on the Netanyahu, Chuck Schumer thing. I know, Congress is a separate entity and so on, but do you agree that Mr. Netanyahu is an obstacle to peace when it comes to the two-state solution, considering that he said that time and again?
I, once again, am just not going to offer any independent assessments about the government of Israel. I think I've made that fairly clear. I will make clear what our positions are with respect to a two-state solution. We have made that very clear for some time, but with respect to assessments about the government of Israel, that's not something I'm going to do from this podium.
All right. Now, Israel says it plans, it's been reported that Israel, in fact, it was reported by AP, that Israel plans to direct Palestinians out of Rafah ahead of anticipated offensive. I mean, is that really acceptable? I mean, are they a herd of cattle? You keep moving them north, south, and so on. You keep moving them from place to place. They're going to put them in, like they call them, human islands and so on.
So,
Is that really acceptable to the government of the United States?
So I saw the comments. What I have yet to see and what our government has yet to see is a plan from the government of Israel. So before I pass any sort of judgment, we are going to continue to do what we have said we would do, which is look for the government of Israel to provide a plan about how they would address the humanitarian situation in Rafah. Absent having seen such a plan and seeing that such a plan is credible and can be executed and implemented, that type of operation is not one that we could support. But while we saw the comments at a press conference, that's different from a plan, and we've yet to see a plan.
Yeah. But in principle, I mean, the notion of moving people like this, keep moving them endlessly. I don't know for how long. Maybe this war will take another 6 months and so on. Is that something that's fine with you?
Yes, with respect, I will wait to see. I will wait to see a plan.
Let me ask you on UNRWA, if I may. Can I ask you on UNRWA?
Of course.
Okay. Yesterday it was struck, and the secretary mentioned that an UNRWA warehouse, whatever, it was struck, and one person was killed. Now, it has also been reported that Israel is planning, or has begun, in fact, to dismantle. I asked you about this a couple of days ago, to dismantle UNRWA, not only in Gaza but also in the West Bank. Now, would the United States, come out and say, look, we will have whatever punishment fit the crime? If it's proven that members or staff members of UNRWA have participated in the October 7th attack, then we will hold them accountable on that level. But you make a commitment to continue to keep aiding UNRWA?
So, Saeed, I do appreciate your continued insistence that I put the cart before the horse and pass judgment on matters that remain open and on which we have not yet been provided the information we said we would have to have before we could pass judgment. But just as I would not pass judgment with respect to a Rafah plan that we have not seen, I'm not going to pass judgment on the outcome of an investigation that is still ongoing. What I will do is make clear what our principles are, which is that we think the allegations against UNRWA need to be investigated thoroughly. They are being investigated. We are waiting for the outcome of that investigation. But none of that changes the fact that right now, UNRWA plays a critical role on the ground in distributing humanitarian assistance to Palestinian civilians, and we will wait with respect to our funding decisions, the outcome of that investigation, before we make further ones.
But, you have been all along, since its creation, you have been the major supporter of UNRWA. UNRWA will probably be, find it difficult to continue without U.S. support. Why can't the U.S. say, we will continue to support you? You keep saying
because there's an investigation that's ongoing into very serious allegations, and we want to see what that investigation finds. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Two questions. I'll follow up on Saeed's in the second question. But the UN said, and I'm just going to quote just to be accurate. So the UN said that the number of children reported killed in just over 4 months in Gaza is higher than the number of children killed in 4 years of wars around the world combined. That's a quote from the UN. So what will the US do to make sure that this statistics is not going to get worse in the next few months?
So first of all, it is an almost unspeakable tragedy, the number of children that have died. It is an unacceptable outcome of the fighting of the past 5 months. And you heard the president speak to this over the weekend. We don't want to see another child die. We didn't want to see any children die, obviously. And that's why we have been engaged with the government of Israel to make clear that they need to do everything possible to minimize civilian casualties, and why we have made clear that with respect to any operation in Rafah, we need to see a credible and executable humanitarian assistance plan before we could support one going forward.
Okay. On UNRWA, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the US is holding any funds or resuming the funds until the results of the investigation is concluded. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. According to my information of talking to UN officials, they're saying basically that Israel never provided an evidence to show these 12 members are involved. And therefore, as long as Israel does not provide this evidence, the investigation is still open and can be open for years to come. So in a way, they indicating could be a political, actually, accusation more than an actual one. And even if it's an actual one, it can be political. So where do we go from there? Because, following up with everything else that was said, UNRWA was created to cater for Palestinian refugees only. And the Israelis has always showed their contempt to UNRWA. And now they're saying that 12 members were involved without giving any evidence. My understanding is they give only orally they convey the message, but no evidence.
There's a few things about that. So, number one, I can't speak for the United Nations with respect to its investigation. Only they can do so, obviously. But they have communicated directly to us that they have the ability to conduct a thorough investigation in this, and we have confidence in their ability to do that, especially with respect to the former French foreign minister, with whom the Secretary has a long-standing working relationship. We have confidence in their ability to investigate these allegations. But second of all, and that maybe even more importantly, I think you have to remember why we made our decision to pause funding in the first place. It was not because of allegations that the government of Israel brought to us. We hadn't heard from the government of Israel about these allegations. It was about allegations that UNRWA brought to us. And when they brought us these allegations, they told us that they had investigated them and found them to be credible, and that's why they had taken action to fire the employees in question. So I don't know what your sources refer to with respect to the inability to get further information, but when we made our initial decision to pause funding, not a final decision, but initial, it was because UNRWA had come to us and told us they found these allegations to be credible, they had conducted an initial investigation, and they had taken action. So that seemed to be us to be a pretty credible source. Not allegations from Israel, but UNRWA itself saying the allegations were serious enough to take action. But with respect to the ongoing investigation, we do have faith in their ability to get to the bottom of what happened.
Sure, I really appreciate it. Just like finally, I really want to get to the bottom of this because, again, my understanding that UNRWA reported as a credible information just because a member state of the UN, which is Israel, reported it, not because they found a credible evidence.
That is not.
Because they are a member state and they have to investigate.
That is not what was communicated to the United States when they first brought it to us. But let me just come back to a broader question, which is something Saeed said, which is the United States has been the largest funder of UNRWA since, I don't know if it's since the beginning, but certainly going back for decades, we have been the largest funder of UNRWA. We are the largest funder of humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people. That commitment on behalf of the United States to continue funding humanitarian assistance remains. And you can count on it from this administration. And you don't just have to look at my words standing here at the podium. You just don't just have to look at what Secretary Blinken said when he was here yesterday, but look at the budgets that President Biden has submitted to Congress. In the supplemental budget that is pending right now in Congress, we have requested billions of dollars in humanitarian assistance that would be used to deliver food and water and medicine to the Palestinian people, and that's because we believe it's important. In the budget that was request that was just submitted to Congress on Monday by this administration, we requested billions of dollars in humanitarian assistance to deliver items to the Palestinian people that they